Hey, welcome to In the Bag podcast. This is episode 5. I'm Kenny.
I'm Kayla.
I'm Tyler.
I'm Jelani. And today we're going to be talking about PTSD and mental health. But before we talk about that, what have you been up to like this past week, Kayla?
So, got an internship.
Oh, that's good.
For fall. And we've been moving, so just figuring that whole situation out. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just focusing on that. I've started a class for my natural holistic certification. So
okay, tell us a little bit about that. What is holistics?
So basically it's just super natural ingredients and products and stuff.
For skin and health and care.
Yeah, basically. It's a future project I'm eventually gonna start. I don't want to say anything now because obviously I don't want to jinx anything. Yeah. But I'm just getting that just so I can prep for my future projects and everything like that. But yeah, I'm excited for that.
What have you been doing, Tyler?
I've been moving from Savannah, Georgia, to
cool.
Tampa. I moved in yesterday.
Okay.
So this is my first official day in Tampa.
Congrats. That's lit. That's a good way to start Tampa.
Tampian.
Yeah.
What about you, Jelani?
I have a second interview for my internship.
Okay,
Nice.
I've been working on my NASM, ACSM.
What's all
so
that?
For anybody that doesn't know, that's exercise science.
Exercise
that's
science,
my major. That's what I'm doing in school.
Okay.
It's my last semester, so that's what I've been doing. I've been studying for that.
And you go to UT?
Right, senior at UT.
Okay, that's
Nice.
cool. All I've been doing this past week is honestly just working like crazy. I feel like I work so much, more than the average person. I just started my second job. It's at Tampa Float's Wellness Center, where they specialize in alternative medicine therapies and sensory deprivation, which is the float tanks.
Yeah.
Which is helps you reach new levels of relaxation. And it's recovery therapy, stuff like that. So it's very good for people with mental health, PTSD, anxiety, depression.
Mm-hmm.
It treats all those things. It's very good with people who suffer from arthritis,
insomnia, because
sleep.
because one float tank equals 5 hours of REM sleep, which is
1 hour in the float tank.
1 hour. That's what
1 hour in the float tank equals 5 hours of deep sleep. So when you come out of the float tank, you feel totally revitalized. It's crazy.
Normal people just sign up and use it just at the
it's Tampa Floats in off of Dale Mabry. You could just go make an appointment. Yeah, I've done it twice, and now I work there, so it's pretty cool. And now that I work there, I can give you a hookup if I fuck with you. If I don't fuck with you, go make an appointment like everyone else. Yeah, right. And then I started getting cross-trained in the lab at my job. So now I'm processing plasma and learning different positions and that too, on top of being a phlebotomist and working with needles and stuff. So that's pretty cool. Other than that, I've just been plodding, busy, working on stuff that I'm not going to talk about yet, but I'll release to the public soon. So like I said, today we're going to talk about PTSD and mental health and stuff like that. Jelani's actually from Chicago, so that's why we brought him in. Because I got my White Sox, I'm a Cubs fan, but it's okay, I'm a Cubs fan. But we're going to talk a little bit about how it affects populations in urban cities and underdeveloped cities.
Yeah.
So do you have any backstory on that? You want to give us an introduction to you, or
Yeah, for sure.
How was it growing up in Chicago?
So we're both from Chicago.
Yeah.
I'm from Chatham. That's 83rd area. If anybody knows Chicago, that's 83rd South Side.
Yeah.
Growing up, I know my friends and I've gotten into situations just being kids, things like that. Yeah. We've had situations where we've seen people at the basketball court get into fights. A guy got jumped. Yeah. I was probably in 7th grade at the time.
Damn.
So it was a dispute over some basketball or something. And so the guy that was getting jumped pulled a gun out and started shooting into the crowd of guys that was jumping him. Yeah. And so I'm in the field house.
And you saw that at what age again? You said
I was in 7th grade.
Okay.
So 12.
Yeah, around 12, 13, like that, something like that. So I'm in the field house, and they bring him inside the field house, and I see this guy, like, being shot at that age. Yeah. I didn't think anything of it at the time.
It's a norm.
But it's normalized.
In certain places.
Yeah, for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's normalized. And then it's just other things I've seen, like my friends have passed away from gun violence. So it's just a lot of things that I wouldn't even be able to, like, express every story, but it does affect you. It does affect other people as well.
What would you say is the average age that people might see guns or have an experience with guns or get guns?
From where I'm from, or
in terms of your experiences, how accessible is it to be prone to that type of
exposure? Basically.
Yeah.
I would say as young as I would say like 12,
11,
something like that. That's too young for any kids to be seeing that.
Yeah.
And just aside from like gun violence, there's other forms of abuse that you can see that does tie into PTSD.
So, like, when did you realize when you had PTSD, or like when did you realize it was like affecting maybe like other areas of your life?
I really didn't think about it until somebody had to bring it to me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't awarely say like, oh, I have PTSD, I have anxiety. Yeah. But I just found out like I have anxiety. Like sometimes like everybody has their things. Like everybody gets anxious about some things. Yeah. But PTSD, like I definitely can feel like the after effects of things that I went through. Things in my childhood, anxiety. So,
would you say that as a result of it being more normalized, is that why you didn't identify with it? Because I also have shared with having certain stress that's caused from trauma and having certain symptoms of PTSD. And honestly, I didn't even know about it until I started dating her, and then she was like, "That's just not normal." Right? And I was like, I was like, what? Like. So, would you say you didn't identify with like having it just because you thought everyone was like that? Like that was like normal for you?
For sure. Yeah. Because my friends back at home that I grew up with, they're basically like a family, like my family. And so it was normalized that we really didn't speak about anything like that. But you could just see as I got older, like the drugs like started to come, like alcoholism, certain behaviors starts to show up. So it really wasn't until I was in a relationship too that I found out like, oh, this isn't normal. It's not normal at all. Like that's just not normal. So I'm glad I found that out. I'm glad I had somebody in my life to tell me that, because some people don't have that. You know what I'm saying?
What would you say is like some of the first things that I was like saying to you, and you're like, what?
I mean, a lot. I think the first thing was the roommate situation, which we talked about on the podcast before. Yeah. But even like little things, just like me turning a corner too fast and like you're right here, like you freak the fuck out. And then even that one time you told me when you were in Chicago for like the summer for 4th of July, and you were gonna go outside, and your dad was like, you're like, I want to see fireworks. And your dad was like, those aren't fireworks.
Yeah.
Those are gunshots.
Yeah, I was visiting my cousins, I think, on the south side. And I was like a little kid, definitely younger than 10. I don't remember the age specifically. But I just remember having a certain unawareness because I would stay in Florida a lot with my mom. So when I would go to Chicago, I remember my dad like always mentioning it like, all right, this is in Florida. Like you have to like be aware of certain differences. Yeah, you gotta be on your P's and Q's. So I just remember that was one of those moments where I wasn't, and then I was made aware of that super fast at a young age, like, because I heard big shots, big sounds, loud sounds, booms. So I was like, bro, I'm like 7 or something. I was like, let me go outside and look at the fireworks. Instantly, my dad was like, nah, you should go in your room and play with your Power Rangers or something instead. And then my dad, he's the type of person to where he really does speak to me, even though I might be like 7 or 5, he'll speak to me like a grown man in how he explains things. So I'll be like, well, why can't I go outside? And he's like, well, that's not fireworks, that's A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Do you think that's like a good thing or a bad thing though?
Well, me and her talk about this all the time because we're very self-reflective in our own relationship. And I think how my dad approached that was very good for me because it brought me into the world knowing certain things and just with a certain sense of awareness that I have about my environment that I feel like helps me maneuver. I feel like that has helped me in the long run.
Yeah. Right. I think it goes back to, like, the type of kid you are,
the type of kid I was, I feel like that was the best for me. I could see how all people, it might not be the best, because then some people might be super scarred or freaked out.
Yeah, that would
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How big of a role do you think your dad plays in, like, you having, like, PTSD and, like, him being able to have these conversations with you?
I think my dad has identified from a young age that he has his own mental health problem. My dad... He's clinically diagnosed with a couple of different things: sleep insomnia, and I've always had issues sleeping. He suffers from anxiety and depression and stuff like that. He was in the military, and he grew up on the South Side, so he's just seen a whole bunch of crazy things. Yeah. And I think as a result of him being aware of it and always being open with me about it, it's helped me identify it. And I haven't seen a lot of things. Like, I've seen some crazy things, but I've seen crazy things also outside of Chicago, and just in my life in general. And then that, like, seeing the crazy things, and then, like, years later, reflecting on it, being like, maybe I shouldn't have been in that situation or seen that. It's made me realize, because of my dad, like, okay, this is what's happening, maybe let me reach out for help, or let me reach out and talk to somebody, or, like, let me figure out, like, let me, like, not bottle it up and, like, make it grow into an issue, because I've seen people do that, people in my family, and I've seen how that doesn't work for them. I don't think bottling up anything helps, which is a part of the reason why the app that we're working on like a health-related medical app, has so many applications for people with PTSD and mental health, because it makes it more accessible to be open and getting help, honestly. Yeah. So I feel like my dad, to answer your question, I feel like my dad played a huge role in that, because it made me perceive the world differently, like think about life and think about where I am differently.
Yeah.
In terms of being more aware. But yeah.
So Tyler, do you have any experiences with any of that, or no?
Not really to like any of that extent, fortunately, but like with the whole, like you talking to your dad, and your dad has you said symptoms of like certain things. I think it's, and your dad, is he the one who's Jamaican?
No, my mom is Jamaican.
Okay, so my mom is Jamaican, and my dad is from Grenada. It's like another Caribbean island. Yeah. And this is not talked about like at all. Like it really, like in my family, and kind of probably in a lot of African Americans' family, it's like, if you're black, you're not crazy. You don't have depression. You don't have, like, what is that? So it wasn't until maybe I got older that I started realizing certain stuff. One of my cousins actually brought to my attention that you probably should go see a therapist, because like, we were talking earlier about this, where like some of my childhood I kind of like blacked out, or like just don't remember.
Me too. Me too. Yeah, I don't remember.
And then like I never really thought about it a lot, because I was just like, oh, it's whatever. Like maybe it just wasn't memorable. Maybe that's how I remember it. But then I think back and I'm like, no, there was some things I think that happened where I'm like, my brain just blocked it out.
And where did you spend the most of your time as a kid growing up? You grew up in Florida or New York?
I would say mostly Florida. It was in Orlando. I think maybe too because with the whole mental health thing, I think my parents divorced because I was like 7. But my parents, when they divorced, I feel like that actually kind of traumatized me from like a little young age. Because I remember, I don't think my parents know this, but I used to hear them argue a lot. And I know that's not like a huge thing, but like it kind of did something to me, because like I didn't realize how badly like my parents' divorce like actually kind of affected me.
You,
so like I kind of got
relationships with people too.
Maybe that's why, because like I'm not really open to like, I'm not like open to people. Like I gotta like no.
Right here.
And even then, like I only have one person like I speak to about like a lot of stuff, and even then I don't tell her everything. And that's my cousin. Yeah.
So I want to ask you like, because you grew up in a different environment in Florida, it's a lot less maybe like crime and violence, and has a different stereotype than what like some urban cities might have. What questions would you have, or like things might you wonder about growing up in a situation like how you grew up, and like how I was in my childhood seeing certain things? What questions might you have for someone who might have PTSD caused from that?
Well, it's just like, how do you cope with that one? And then also, like, where would you even get the resources to, like, when you're that young? Because I feel like now a lot more people our age are kind of more aware of, like, mental health. Yeah. But it's like, what do you do at that young age when, like, you're 12, 13, you don't have a car, you can't drive? I guess you can walk in certain diseases.
Especially because I feel like PTSD, in terms of, you know, talking about mental illness, it's not, I feel like, very common, or maybe it is common, just not talked about for younger people to have. I feel like it happens, you hear more about like people, maybe young people who are like in the military, or like who go away or something. But in terms of like when you're talking about young people, it's a lot of times like depression, anxiety, but I feel like a lot of times it's not talked about PTSD. So I feel like also kind of how you like how you even like reach out to people or like go about even, because I would say I don't have PTSD either, or even any like form of it. So but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think PTSD is a problem that affects multiple places, and we were talking about Chicago just specifically for the fact that we have experience in Chicago, in that city, but it's like there's PTSD that comes out of places in Florida because there's violent places in Florida. Like we were talking about before like a little earlier, we started talking about the Trump comments on what he was saying about Baltimore. For those who don't know, Baltimore is a city that has a lot of violence, a lot of crime, a lot of murders, and a lot of people who are in bad neighborhoods and bad environments and a bad socioeconomic class in general. And it makes you wonder, like, systematically, why isn't anyone helping? And then I started thinking about this recently when Trump came out and he was like, you know what he said. What did he say again? It's like calling him rats recently? Or something. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He said it's rat infested. He said it's just a terrible place because he's trying to get back at
Elijah Cummings.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. That whole situation, it made me think like, so like the leader of the free world, leader of our country, he sees that there's an issue and there's still nothing being done about it. I know people who grew up in the projects and are literally mentally scarred from some of the things that they've seen from a young age. And it's like, if there just was certain resources available, I feel like it would be a whole different narrative. You know what I mean?
It goes back to like how this country is also built too, because especially for urban areas, like there's not a lot of access to like even the education system. Like I remember for me, my school was not in the best area, but we were an A school, so all schools around us had crappy textbooks or didn't even have any like computers, but we had computers, even though we were in the same area, just like the type of school it was. But yeah, like the way the system is set up too, just in terms of all of that school system, like lack of access for healthcare, as y'all were saying before with the app, like all of that. So, but yeah.
And I was gonna say, like, even off of that, like it's the same thing with like Flint, Michigan, how it's taken them so long just to get clean water. But if it was like a white rural area, they would have had like clean water like the next day. So I think too, like systematically and how like the hood was even created, how they push people to be in certain areas. And then what doesn't make sense too is that like you see those areas are not doing well, and I know some politicians have said like, you should put more money into these schools, fix them up, make it safer for kids to be there, fix up the neighborhoods so that kids have more access to education, or just feel safe. And they don't want to do that. So like they talk about it, but then they don't really try to either help it either, or they defund public schools, which doesn't.
Or they try to gentrify the schools that are in those areas too. Be like, let me just throw like about 70 white people in here, and then we can get more funding for the school through there.
That's a huge thing that's happening in Chicago. Like most people don't even realize there's probably more police academies and police stations than they have public school systems. They started taking money out of public schooling and putting it into the police academies and shit like that, which makes no sense to me. I feel like that's not how you aid the situation.
So it's so much police presence in Chicago. It's pretty much overwhelming to for me even being there. So I can't even imagine like everybody's still there. But it really got worse recently, because I think they are trying to fix the problem, but that doesn't fix the problem. Like more police on the street hasn't fixed the problem. It's never fixed the problem. So we need to look at it at a different angle, and I feel like they're just not the right people
in charge
to be doing it, because the president right now said that the mass shooting, the the shootings that just happened, sadly, he just brought up mental illness with them. But there's violence going on in inner cities,
certain cities,
and they don't mention mental health or anything.
They mention words like thugs.
So it's all about propaganda.
So I have a question. So like, because you grew up in Chicago and like you saw a lot of maybe gun violence too, how do you like, and because that gives you PTSD, or it has stemmed from PTSD for you, do you feel like if there was more like maybe gun control, or like if there was like less guns on the street, do you think you wouldn't have had the same experience, or do you feel like people would still have guns either way?
I think it goes further than guns. I think it's about socioeconomic class.
I think it's about resources.
Resources, accessibility, things of that nature. So I feel like those things need to be fixed But I think mental health is really the first thing because it all starts in your mind. Like it's a mentality. If you put money into a community and they have the wrong mentality, where are they going to use it on?
True.
Exactly. Drugs,
that's true.
Other things. You need to fix your mentality.
I feel like a lot of people don't have the presence of mind to know that life doesn't have to be like that. You know what I mean? If you're stuck in a cage, you're a product of your environment. Like many people say, G. Herman says that shit all the time.
Yeah,
you're a product of your exactly. You're a product of your environment. So it's like if you're grown up in a society where that's the normal thing. Because like honestly, a lot of people don't know this stuff until they talk to other people later on in life, and then they're like, oh, I might have PTSD. Like that's not normal to go through those experiences. So it's like the mentality won't change if it's normalized. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is where I wanted to kind of go into the direction of talking about coping mechanisms and like how do you think someone could deal with it once it's identified?
I would say that people use a lot of coping mechanisms. So you can find anything to escape in. Some people may escape in other people, drugs, alcoholism. So it could be any of those things, but the right way to cope, like the way you should when you're ready.
Like the healthier way.
Yeah, the healthier way is to talk to someone. Man, like that's like a lot of people don't have people to talk to, and then they don't have access to clinics, mental health clinics, and they don't know about it. Like they're not educated. So I think like we said, our app, I think that'll give like access, how we said, bridge the gap between basically people that need help and
getting the help.
Yeah, getting the help for sure.
But no, that's awesome though. And I feel like also like what we were talking about earlier when we were just discussing the podcast, for I feel like us who don't have PTSD, or maybe not so PTSD, but just things that you see in your childhood, like you said, your divorce of your parents, or even for me, like I didn't see a lot of violence as a kid, but I saw a good amount of violence that I remember.
Saw like, kind of like a little bit of domestic violence.
Yeah, domestic.
That could scar you too.
And that, and the fact of like just a lot of anger throughout like my family and stuff, seeing that, I wouldn't say so much gives me PTSD, but definitely stems from anxiety. And I think also like, when you have something else, it's a lot easier what you were talking about, talking to other people, like being more vulnerable with people and kind of like, you know, getting that wall out the way. It helps too, because if you have anxiety, for example, and you're talking to somebody else and be like, hey, I have anxiety, and they're like, oh, I have that too, and I also maybe have this, and then it kind of helps also, you know, just kind of make the conversation flow.
Yeah, exactly.
I think too, I feel like parents should also be aware of like what they do in front of their kids, and also like, because I feel like a lot of parents think too, like your kids aren't listening or kids aren't paying attention. You kind of remember, you start noticing stuff at an early age. Like kids are pretty smart and they absorb, impressionable, and they absorb a lot of stuff. I think too, especially like in the Black community, it needs to be talked about like so much more. So I feel like that's why you have like a lot of people who are like have no emotion, who like are basically sociopaths, so like they don't feel anything, or they don't talk about emotion, they don't even know what it is, or they refuse to.
They numb themselves.
Exactly.
I feel like that's a general stereotype in the Black community, that like when you have emotions or feelings, or you feel a certain type of way, that you're considered to be weak. Right, or something like that, especially if you're a man. Especially as a Black man. So it's like taboo in certain communities, and I think we're pushing more and more away from that the more progressive and modern we get. But it's still something that a lot of people are raised with. From their parents.
And it trickles down through generations, right? So like if like I feel like our parents' generation is more those generation who grew up with the be seen not heard type of thing also, but I feel like our generation is trying to change that. But then sadly you do have still like that generational thing where it's like if you grew up like this, then you're most likely, if you didn't, you know, tackle your own issues and like your own demons, then you might raise your kids the same way. So it kind of trickles down. It kind of trickles down. So just it goes back to self-awareness too.
Well, I was gonna say too, like it's also like, why is it so hard being like a minority and like just being Black? Like there's so many stressful things I think too that I get stressed out about, like when I see like the school shootings, or even like in the fact that some of them were like Trump supporters, or like going back to like the Dylan Roof and how like he shot the 8 people in the church, and how the church let him in because it's a church, like they welcome all people. That kind of stresses me out too, because it's like it's super common, and like I don't. What's today? Sunday? No,
Monday.
Okay. I don't know, the first shooting that happened, or like the second one that happened 24 hours later. Like I was
the Daytona one.
One. Like I was super shocked. So I'm like, is this the one from yesterday? Like I'm very confused.
So it's like different shooting, a whole different
right
within
like,
hours.
It's so normalized.
And like it's so normalized. So I'm almost I don't want to be desensitized to it, but it's like almost like it happens so often. Then you have racists who are like super buck now because of the
maybe
president.
add fuel to the fire because they feel certain way because Trump is president.
And I'm just like, okay, so on top of being stressed about like other stuff, I gotta be stressed about like just walking outside.
I think most people don't even realize that PTSD is affecting everyone in America because there's a lot of crazy shit happening. Like, for instance, we talked about when we went to go see one movie randomly, and I told her, I was like, it's crazy to think of it. Every time I walk into a movie theater, instantly I have to mark the exit. I look for who's around me because I'm like, I feel like someone might come in there randomly and shoot this bitch out.
I remember you saying, you're like, we're in a box right now.
I was like,
and
we're
it's
in a
very
box,
easy.
and there's maybe one exit.
It's happened before.
Exactly.
You can't.
I think about that shit during the previews of every single movie, and that's a form of PTSD. Like, most people don't realize PTSD might not always be the extreme versions from when you're young, you're seeing gun violence and stuff like that, but it's a spectrum, just like most things, to where little things in this country, like every time I'm driving and I pass a cop car, I get anxiety.
I get terrified.
I get terrified. That's a form of PTSD too.
Okay.
And the fact of like, I know for me, for example, even like I don't like being super approachable, or I don't like I don't like people coming up to me super close, and it sucks because like people you know might just want to have a conversation, might just want to be your friend, but like I can't trust you, especially if I'm alone by myself. Like I can get snatched like that. So like things like that, which is true. It doesn't even have to be a direct thing. You can just hear something about it and just can continue seeing something, hearing something about it, and then it just continues.
I agree 100%, and I feel like this is a good conversation to have because I feel like people are starting to realize more and more that this is an issue that in some way might affect everyone in this country, just being in this country. Whether you're a black male in this country, you most likely have PTSD and you might not know. Whether you're a woman in this country, you might have anxiety about getting snatched or stuff like that.
Or the people trying to control your body.
Or stuff like that, which might lead to PTSD or stress and mental health, and you might not know. So I think this is, we'll cut the conversation here, but I feel like this is a good place to stop. Would you like to plug anything else before we end it though?
Yeah, get y'all ads in.
Yeah, get your ads.
Yeah, follow me on Instagram at JelaniW3. We got a lot of stuff coming out, me and Kenny. Yeah. So, that's me.
Tyler, you want to plug anything or mention anyone, shout out anyone?
Twitter and Instagram, it's just Tyler Noel _. I don't have nothing really coming up as of yet. But actually, I think me and a friend of mine are going to be working on like a political podcast. So
we're definitely going to be on the list for that then.
Yes, love that.
Yeah.
You can follow me at golden_Kayla 2 A's. And then, I mean, you can just keep a lookout. I have projects coming, but I'm not going to say anything yet, obviously. But yeah, that's about it.
And like always, thank you guys for listening.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
Like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Cool.